They love you. So why are they ignoring you? The hidden psychology, Carl Jung. So as we've explored today, love is not always straightforward. Sometimes, the deeper it goes, the more it triggers hidden fears and unresolved emotions in the other person. As Carl Jung taught, what we awaken in someone else's unconscious can cause them to pull away, not because they don't care, but because they're overwhelmed by what they feel. True love is not control, but a journey of mutual growth. If it's real, it will find its way back. Have you ever faced a situation like this? Share your story or insight in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a soul-stirring insight. 1. Love triggers the unconscious, not just the heart. Love, as Carl Jung warned, doesn't just stir the heart, it disturbs the soul. Especially for men between the ages of 30 and 65, who often carry decades of emotional conditioning, love can act as a spiritual awakening, not a comforting escape. Jung believed that true love doesn't just touch the surface of our desires, but drills deep into the psyche, unearthing unconscious fears, childhood wounds, and old emotional scars we thought we had buried long ago. When someone loves you deeply, truly, soulfully, it doesn't only activate longing or passion, it can shake the foundation of their emotional defenses. And in modern life, where men are expected to be strong, rational, and in control at all times, this sudden emotional upheaval can be terrifying. That's why a man who loves you may suddenly withdraw, ignore, or become cold, not out of indifference, but because the relationship has triggered something far more complex than just affection. It has touched his shadow, the hidden self that Jung described as the repository of everything we reject or repress. This is not rejection. This is psychological self-preservation. In today's world, where relationships are often reduced to text messages and short-term connections, the moment a deep, spiritual connection forms one that feels different, unfamiliar, and intense, it can push a man to retreat. The silence, the distance, the ignoring, these are not always signs that he doesn't care. They can be signs that he cares so much. He's terrified of what it awakens in him. That fear might come from early abandonment, a sense of inadequacy, or the unconscious belief that he doesn't deserve such love. As Jung emphasized, we don't just fall in love with a person, we fall into the projections of our psyche. We see parts of ourselves in the other person, including parts we've disowned or never learned to love. That's why spiritual relationships that awaken us can be so volatile. They force us to look at ourselves in a way that surface-level relationships never could. If you're experiencing this today, if someone you love is ignoring you without explanation, take a step back and consider the possibility that your presence in their life has stirred something unconscious and raw. This isn't a time to chase or demand clarity. It's a time to understand that spiritual love is not always soothing. It is often disruptive. It doesn't just want to make you feel good. It wants to make you whole. And wholeness requires that both people face their shadows. In this light, ignoring isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's a subconscious call for space to process a psychological storm. To the men listening, if you found yourself walking away from someone you love, sit with discomfort instead of running. Ask yourself what you're really afraid of. Is it her or what she reflects back to you. And to those on the receiving end of that silence, know this: spiritual awakening rarely comes gently. It often arrives wrapped in confusion and silence. Don't take it personally. Take it as a sign that your love might be opening doors within them that have never been opened before. In a world addicted to instant gratification, true love remains a sacred interruption. It is not always neat, logical, or convenient, but it is always transformative. As Jung said, until you become conscious of the unconscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it destiny. Love, especially spiritual love, is one of the most powerful forces that can bring the unconscious into consciousness. And sometimes, the silence you hear is not an absence, but the soul processing something it never expected to find. Comment below. I listen to my inner voice. 2. Ignoring may be a defense mechanism, not rejection. When someone you care about begins to ignore you without warning, your first instinct might be to believe they've stopped loving you, that something about you pushed them away. But what if I told you that their silence could actually be a reflection of just how deeply they feel for you? In the world of spirituality and emotional psychology, this kind of withdrawal is often not a sign of rejection, but a sign of inner chaos. Carl Jung, the great analytical psychologist, taught that our shadow, the unconscious part of us we try to hide, can become activated in the presence of deep connection. When love touches a part of someone they haven't yet made peace with, it doesn't always feel like bliss. It can feel like a threat. This is when emotional avoidance becomes a subconscious tool for survival. Ignoring you may be the only way they know how to cope with the fear of losing control, of being seen too clearly, or of confronting parts of themselves they've kept buried. This behavior is not necessarily about you. It's about the intensity of the mirror you hold up to their soul. Let's bring this into a real-life situation. Have you ever had a moment when someone's kindness made you uncomfortable? Not because you didn't like it, but because you didn't know how to receive it. Maybe a friend offered you a level of affection or support you weren't used to, and instead of leaning in, you pulled away. It wasn't about them. It was about what their presence stirred within you. In the same way, someone ignoring you might actually be wrestling with their own unhealed wounds, fears of vulnerability, or past trauma that your love unintentionally awakens. Their silence is not a declaration that you're unworthy. It's a sign that they're overwhelmed by the emotional intensity. It's like standing in front of a spiritual mirror and seeing not only who they are, but who they're afraid to become. And when people aren't ready to grow, they retreat. So let me ask you, when someone pulls away from you, do you instantly personalize it? Or can you pause to consider what kind of inner battle they might be facing? Spiritual growth often demands that we don't take everything at face value. It teaches us to look deeper, to see silence not as a wall, but as a doorway into the unseen, into the soul's language of fear and transformation. That doesn't mean you should tolerate disrespect or emotional neglect, but it does mean you can start seeing the behavior through a lens of understanding rather than pain. Sometimes, the one who ignores you is the one who is most afraid to lose you, because your presence challenges the identity they've built around not feeling enough. Ultimately, the lesson is this: not all silence is rejection. Some silences are a sign of an inner storm. If love opens someone's wound, healing it is not your job, but an invitation to grow spiritually. Learn to recognize when someone's withdrawal is due to their own struggles, not your values. By doing so, you not only protect your heart, but also expand your capacity for compassion and inner peace. That is the true power of spiritual growth. Learning to stay balanced, even when others are out of balance. Comment below. I choose spiritual growth. 3. Emotional intimacy awakens. Fear of vulnerability. When emotional intimacy begins to deepen, when someone starts to truly feel seen, known, and accepted for who they are not, for who they pretend to be, it can stir something unexpected. Fear. And not just any fear, but the fear of vulnerability. You see, the closer the emotional bond becomes, the more it threatens the protective walls people have built over a lifetime. For those who carry spiritual wounds, perhaps from abandonment in childhood, betrayal in past relationships, or rejection during formative years, being loved deeply doesn't always feel safe. It can actually feel like a loss of control. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In the realm of love, this rings especially true. People unconsciously push away what they most desire when it starts to awaken their most buried fears. This is where spiritual wisdom comes in, not just as knowledge, but as awareness. The kind of awareness that helps you recognize that when someone starts ignoring you, it might not mean they've stopped loving you. Instead, it could mean that your emotional closeness is triggering their unresolved pain, making them retreat as a form of self-protection. Have you ever felt like the more you opened your heart to someone, the more they began to pull away? If so, you're not alone, and you're not imagining things. This isn't a simple case of emotional detachment. It's often a subconscious defense mechanism. Many people believe that love is only about joy, warmth, and connection. But Carl Jung teaches us that love also exposes the shadow of the part of ourselves we hide, deny, or fear. When love gets close enough to shine a light on that shadow, some people panic. They might distance themselves, go silent, or even sabotage the relationship, not because they don't care, but because caring too much terrifies them. It's a paradox. They crave closeness, yet flee from it. They want to be held, yet they're terrified of being seen. And this internal contradiction creates confusing behavior that hurts not only you, but also themselves. So, what does this mean for you? It means don't rush to internalize their silence as rejection. Instead, ask yourself, what does this behavior reflect about their emotional wounds? Are they pulling away because they don't love you, or because they're overwhelmed by how deeply they do? In the world of spiritual wisdom, we learn that love is a mirror. It reflects not just beauty and harmony, but also hidden pain and unresolved trauma. And sometimes, when you reflect too much light, the other person isn't ready to face their own darkness. That's not your fault. It's just where they are on their journey. The question is, can you see their silence not as abandonment, but as a sign of inner conflict? And are you able to hold compassion without abandoning yourself in the process? Emotional intimacy is a gift, but not everyone is emotionally equipped to receive it. So before you chase the one who's ignoring you, pause and reflect, not just on their actions, but on the spiritual lessons behind them. After all, as Carl Jung taught us, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. What transformation is this moment asking of you? And how can you respond with both love and boundaries, compassion and wisdom? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how this has shaped your journey. 4. The shadow self sabotages love unconsciously. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These powerful words from Carl Jung open the door to a deeper truth, one that many men overlook when love turns cold and silence replaces connection. You see, in relationships, especially those that stir deep emotions, the spiritual journey doesn't always look like peace and harmony. Sometimes, love activates hidden wounds buried so deeply in the unconscious that even the person experiencing them cannot understand their own reactions. When someone you love begins to ignore you, not with malice, but with quiet withdrawal, it's easy to internalize that as rejection, as if you're somehow not enough. But here's the spiritual wisdom that Jung left behind. What we repress does not vanish, it gets projected. In other words, their silence may not be about you at all. It may be their shadow, the denied, unacknowledged, and unloved parts of themselves rising to the surface in the presence of real love. And that kind of love is terrifying, not because it's harmful, but because it's honest. It shines a light on the parts of them that are still trapped in pain, shame, fear, or unresolved trauma. Your love becomes a mirror, and what they see reflected back isn't just affection. It's the parts of themselves they've tried to bury for decades. And so, they run. They ignore it. They retreat. But their avoidance isn't necessarily a lack of love. It's a reaction to an inner war. In modern life, this plays out more than we admit. A man might find the woman of his dreams, but the moment things feel real, he pulls away. Why? Because true intimacy is not just physical, it's spiritual. It triggers a spiritual awakening, and with that comes the confrontation of everything that has been left in the dark. The shadow self doesn't want to be seen, but love exposes it anyway. So what can you do? First, understand that being ignored in love is not always a personal failure. It may be a reflection of someone else's internal chaos, their fear of being vulnerable, or their resistance to transformation. Second, this is your invitation not to chase them, but to turn inward. What is their silence showing you about your own wounds, your own expectations, your own emotional patterns? Third, instead of clinging or reacting, hold space with dignity, strength, and awareness. As Jung taught, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Let this be the moment you choose awakening over reaction, spiritual clarity over emotional chaos. Ask yourself, are you truly seeing them, or are you reacting to the absence of validation? And deeper still, are you at peace with your own presence when love feels distant? Real love requires us to meet ourselves fully before we can truly meet another. In their silence, you may find your own voice. In their withdrawal, you may discover your true power. The man who can sit with his pain without projecting it, he's the one who rises. He becomes grounded, spiritual, awake. So the next time someone pulls away from you, ask yourself, what part of their shadow did my light just touch? Because when love feels confusing, That's often when it's closest to the truth. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Your journey to stoic self-mastery and victory continues with each lesson. 5. Distance is sometimes a subconscious test of love. Sometimes, when someone loves you deeply, their first instinct is not to come closer, but to pull away. And while that may seem confusing, even painful, it often stems from something buried deep within their subconscious. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This couldn't be more true when it comes to love. Many people, without even realizing it, create distance not to abandon the relationship, but to test it. This is not a conscious or strategic decision. It's often a defense mechanism shaped by past wounds, attachment styles, and fears of vulnerability. They want to know, will you stay even when I'm not always available? Can this connection survive when I retreat into silence? It's a way to see if the relationship has roots that go deeper than daily reassurance. And while this silent test of love might feel cruel, it's a cry for emotional safety masked as withdrawal. Let's make this real with a story you might recognize in your own life. Think about someone who suddenly stopped replying to your texts, not out of anger, but out of nowhere. No fight, no warning. Maybe it was after an intense emotional moment. Perhaps you felt like things were finally getting closer, more intimate, more real, and then they disappeared. You waited, confused, wondering what went wrong. But what if nothing went wrong? What if their silence was a mirror of their inner chaos? What if their love for you triggered an old wound that told them, "This will hurt you, run before it's too late"? In a world where emotional survival has often meant shutting down, stepping back, or pretending not to care, this kind of distancing becomes a form of self-protection. It doesn't mean the love is fake. It often means the love is real and terrifying. Now, does that mean you should always wait for them to return? Not necessarily. Here's where spirituality and spiritual growth come into play. True spiritual growth invites you to understand the unseen forces behind human behavior, but it also teaches you to protect your energy, your peace, and your heart. You are not here to chase someone who is still running from their own soul. The healthiest kind of love is not proven by how much pain you can endure, but by how much peace it can bring to both people involved. So the next time someone pulls away, ask yourself, is this distance a reflection of their inner conflict or a lesson for me about my own worth? Can you hold space for their journey without abandoning your own? In the end, this hidden dynamic isn't about games. It's about fear, about wounds, about a heart unsure how to receive what it deeply desires. When someone tests love through silence, what they're really asking is it safe to be seen? Will I still be loved if I don't perform, explain, or show up perfectly? It's a shadowed plea for unconditional acceptance. But remember, your spiritual path is not just about understanding others, but also about standing in your truth. Love them, but don't lose yourself trying to prove your love. Real love should expand both souls, not shrink them. So let me ask you, have you ever felt like someone's silence was testing you? Did you stay, or did you grow from it? Share your experience below, because these are the real questions of the heart that lead us into the most profound spiritual awakening. 6. Your reaction should be rooted in self-awareness, not fear. When someone you care about suddenly begins to pull away or goes silent without explanation, your first instinct might be to panic, to overthink, or to chase after them for answers. But what if I told you that your reaction in those moments can reveal far more about your own inner world than theirs? Carl Jung, the great thinker of the unconscious, once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." And that's the spiritual wisdom we must lean into when we're faced with emotional distance. Their silence may not be a reflection of your shortcomings. It could be a mirror reflecting their own unresolved battles. People often retreat when they feel emotionally overwhelmed, when love activates old wounds, or when they are confronted with parts of themselves they are not ready to face. So, if someone's absence is making you question your worth, pause and ask yourself, what wound is this silence touching in me? Is it abandonment, rejection, the fear of being unlovable? That reaction isn't something to suppress. It's an invitation to investigate. Spiritual awakening begins when we stop reacting out of fear and start responding with self-awareness. When you resist the urge to chase, to force clarity, or to beg for emotional breadcrumbs, you create space not just for them, but for yourself to understand what is truly happening beneath the surface. Because the truth is, not all distance is personal. Sometimes, people pull away not because you did something wrong, but because your presence activates something deep within them, something they're not ready to explore. And here's the hard part. You may never get the explanation you think you deserve. So the question is, what do you do with this silence? Do you let it break you or build you? In moments like this, spiritual wisdom teaches us to turn our focus inward, to be curious about our own emotional triggers rather than trying to decipher the confusion of others. Have you ever thought about how we often seek healing through the words of others, when what we really need is to listen to our inner voice? Carl Jung warned us that our shadow, the unconscious part that we deny or reject, often comes out in how we respond to rejection or ambiguity. So when someone disappears, that shadow becomes loud. But instead of running from it, what if we sat with it, understood it, and let it transform us? Because growth doesn't come from control. It comes from letting go, understanding, and being emotionally honest. The next time someone leaves you, instead of rushing to fill the void, try sitting down next to them. Let it teach you things that still need healing. Let it awaken your spiritual power. Ask yourself, what would it be like to choose peace over panic? You see, the biggest breakthroughs in love often don't happen when we cling, but when we let go with dignity, and with a deep commitment to our own emotional evolution. Comment below, I am committed to my feelings. 7. Real love evolves through awareness, not control. They say that real love doesn't chain you, it frees you. And in the words of Carl Jung, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. So let's talk about what that really means when someone you love starts ignoring you. Especially as a man in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or even 60s, this silence can feel confusing, even humiliating. You gave your heart, your presence, your effort, and now you're left with distance and questions. But what if that space isn't rejection? What if it's the exact environment required for spiritual awakening, for both you and them? Because real love is the kind that matters, the kind that endures, isn't about control, manipulation, or clinging to someone until they bend to your will. It's about awareness. It's about growth. It's about creating the kind of connection that breathes, evolves, and allows both people to expand. Jung taught us that the greatest love helps us understand who we truly are. So when they walk away, the pain might actually be a portal, a signal that you are meant to evolve, not for them, but for yourself. This is spiritual maturity, knowing that if love is real, it will come back not because you chased it, but because both souls have transformed into new versions of themselves who can meet again on higher ground. And if it doesn't return, then it wasn't meant to survive the spiritual fire, and that's not a failure. That's a sacred lesson, a message that love must first deepen within yourself before it can flourish with another. So what does that look like in modern life? It means not sending that angry text when you feel ignored. It means choosing growth over reaction. It means building a life that's so fulfilling, so rooted in spiritual self-respect, that whether they come back or not, you've already won. You've already become the man you were supposed to be. So let me ask you, what would it look like if you saw silence not as abandonment, but as an invitation to expand your awareness, to reconnect with your values, to refine your purpose, to become someone whose love radiates from self-possession, not need? Because at the end of the day, that's the kind of man who doesn't just attract love, he sustains it. And when someone leaves, they remember him, not for how loud he shouted, but for how deeply he understood. That is the quiet power of spiritual wisdom. That is the real work. So if you're facing distance right now, don't just wait until you elevate. Do your inner work, embrace your shadow, walk through the pain, and transform it into strength. Love that evolves through pressure is temporary, but love that returns after spiritual transformation, that's eternal. What part of this message resonates with you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how this has shaped your journey. So as we've explored today, love is not always straightforward. Sometimes, the deeper it goes, the more it triggers hidden fears and unresolved emotions in the other person. As Carl Jung taught, what we awaken in someone else's unconscious can cause them to pull away, not because they don't care, but because they're overwhelmed by what they feel. True love is not control, but a journey of mutual growth. If it's real, it will find its way back. Have you ever faced a situation like this? Share your story or insight in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And hit the notification bell so you never miss a soul-stirring insight. The hidden curse of being an intuitive introvert. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. Albert Einstein. Have you ever sensed the truth before anyone spoke it, only to be dismissed as too sensitive, too intense, or just plain wrong? On Spiritual Wisdom, today's video dives into the hidden world of intuitive introverts, those rare souls who absorb the energy of a room, detect unspoken emotions, and see patterns others ignore. Carl Jung believed this personality wasn't just rare, it was a burden in a world that doesn't believe what it cannot explain. But what if your sensitivity isn't a flaw, but a spiritual compass guiding your growth? If you've ever felt unseen for the depth you carry, this message is for you. Watch closely, and if you resonate, comment below. I honor my intuitive truth. Let's create space for those who feel deeply and trust what can't be proven. 1. The gift. Intuitive perception beyond the norm. They move through the world as if they were born with an extra sense that doesn't rely on eyes or ears, but on the silent whispers of the soul. They feel when something is off long before it shows. They wake from dreams, carrying the emotional weight of events that haven't happened yet, only to see them unfold days or weeks later. They sit in rooms and immediately know who's pretending, who's hurting, who's hiding something behind a smile. And yet, when they try to speak it, they are met with disbelief, discomfort, or silence. Carl Jung called this introverted intuition, a function not of logic, but of the unconscious. It's not a guess. It's a deep, soul-based perception that reaches beyond facts and into patterns, energies, and truths not yet spoken. These men are not imagining things. Their inner world is simply more developed, more attuned. They live not only in the physical world, but in the symbolic one, a place filled with archetypes, emotions, and meaning that others don't even notice. This dual existence becomes both a gift and a torment. On one hand, they can sense when something's wrong in a relationship before the first fight. They can feel the future shifting before a decision is made. They know when someone's lying, even when the words are perfect. But on the other hand, they are often forced to keep it to themselves. Because when a man says, "I just know," and there's no evidence, people pull away. They question him. They mock him. And slowly, he starts to question himself. But the truth is that knowing comes from a deeper place, from the unconscious, from the soul's connection to something larger. He isn't guessing. He's receiving. And in a world that worships certainty and proof, that kind of soul wisdom becomes lonely. Still, it doesn't go away. It keeps showing up, quietly, persistently, asking to be trusted. These men often suffer in silence. They sense betrayal before it comes, danger before it arrives, endings before they're acknowledged. They see the truth behind the mask, and they carry the burden of awareness that others ignore. It's not easy to live with a soul that's always listening, always translating what others cannot see. But it's not madness. It's not overthinking. It's not a weakness. It's a spiritual intelligence, a silent genius rooted in the unconscious, shaped by energy, and driven by meaning rather than noise. Carl Jung understood this. He knew the intuitive man would be misunderstood, even feared, not because he was dangerous to others, but because he threatened the illusion of control. Because while others rely on what they can prove, the intuitive man relies on what he knows deep down, even when there are no words. And this knowledge isn't just about reading people, it's about alignment. His soul doesn't tolerate fake friendships, hollow goals, or toxic environments. He walks away from what drains him, not because he's weak, but because he can feel the cost of staying. His life becomes a spiritual path, guided not by rules, but by resonance. And that's where his power lies, not in convincing others, but in honoring his own inner compass. Because when he trusts that silent voice within, he no longer needs approval. He no longer chases validation. He simply moves, quietly, soulfully, in harmony with what only he can feel. And that is his greatest strength. Have you ever just known something without being able to explain why? If you've experienced those intuitive flashes through dreams, gut feelings, or subtle energy shifts, share your story in the comments so others can connect. And if you're just beginning to explore this gift, comment, "I will trust my intuition to commit to your inner journey." 2. The curse. Two realities and the psychological toll. Most people navigate life relying on what they can see, measure, and explain. But you, as an intuitive introvert, move through the world guided by a deeper frequency, one that senses energy shifts, hidden emotions, symbolic patterns, and unspoken truths. You don't just read words, you feel intention. You don't just observe events, you absorb meaning. In every room, you notice what's off before anyone else does. You pick up on subtle cues, a forced smile, a tone of voice that doesn't match the words, a silence that speaks louder than sound. Carl Jung spoke of this inner world, a realm governed not by logic, but by archetypes, the unconscious, and the soul's quiet language. But the burden of this gift is heavy, because the world doesn't believe what it can't prove. When you speak your truth, people question your sanity. When you try to warn someone, they laugh it off until your prediction comes true. And by then, the emotional damage is already done. This creates a psychological split. Two realities living within you. One is shared with the masses, practical, observable, rational. The other is your private knowing, where intuition speaks louder than facts. And this dual perception slowly wears you down. You begin to feel like an outsider, too strange to be understood, too deep for surface-level relationships. You crave authenticity, yet the more you reveal, the more misunderstood you become. There's a loneliness in seeing what others can't, in carrying emotional burdens that no one recognizes, in speaking truths that others reject. The more attuned you are to this unseen world, the more alienated you feel in the visible one. Jung warned of this very experience, that those who are gifted with deeper insight often suffer the most because they live at the edge of what society is ready to understand. You might find yourself retreating from people, not because you dislike them, but because you can feel their chaos before they even open their mouth. Crowded rooms make your nervous system ache. Small talk becomes unbearable. You're not rude, you're overwhelmed. Your mind is always processing. Your heart is always absorbing. You may try to numb your gift, to pretend not to notice, to play along. But repression only leads to fragmentation. The more you deny what you sense, the more disconnected you become from yourself. Jung taught that individuation, the journey toward wholeness, requires us to embrace, not exile, the parts of us that don't fit the mold. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's the language of your soul. Your knowledge is not delusion. It's data that others have forgotten how to read. This spiritual responsibility asks you not to harden, but to protect. Not to silence yourself, but to speak more clearly. Not to shrink, but to honor your perception with boundaries and discernment. The path of the intuitive introvert is not easy. It is sacred. You are here to see what others ignore and to remind them when the time is right of what they have forgotten. This isn't about proving anything. It's about living in alignment with your own inner compass. Trust what you feel, even when no one else does. And when in doubt, return to Jung's wisdom. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. That awakening is your curse, but it is also your gift. Let it guide you. If you've ever felt caught between two worlds, seeing what others ignore, feeling what they deny, comment below. I see what others don't. Your voice matters here, and your truth deserves a place to be heard. 3. Jung's psychological framework. Carl Jung identified 4 core functions of the psyche: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. And for intuitive introverts, it's intuition that governs their inner compass. But because sensation is their weakest function, they often feel ungrounded, detached from the physical world, as if they're drifting between dimensions that others can't see. They're not just imagining things, they're decoding the invisible. They enter a room and instantly know who's lying, not by words or gestures, but because their inner world lights up with truth. They dream of heartbreaks before they happen, feel a shift in someone's energy before betrayal is revealed, and sense when something is off, even when everyone else sees calm. But when they try to express these truths, they're met with suspicion, pity, or laughter. The very thing that gives them spiritual sight isolates them. It's not that they're wrong, it's that the world is blind to what they see. Their perception isn't linear, it's symbolic, emotional, energetic. They live through metaphor and synchronicity, receiving information from dreams, gut feelings, and passing thoughts that carry weight others can't feel. The curse isn't their insight, it's the burden of not being believed. They're labeled overly sensitive, dramatic, or weird, not because their intuition fails, but because it surpasses normal comprehension. They sense the storm while the sky is still blue. They pull away from people everyone else adores because something deep inside them says, "Be careful." And months later, the truth comes out, but by then, the intuitive has already carried the weight in silence. Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And for intuitive introverts, that awakening can feel more like exile. Their inner clarity is sharp, but the outer world demands evidence. It demands logic where only energy speaks, and so they shrink. They second guess. They doubt what they feel just to be accepted by those who can't even feel themselves. But the truth remains. Their intuition is not a glitch. It is a spiritual design. It's a sacred system tuned to frequencies most people have long forgotten. And yet, because they can't show it, can't prove it, they often try to suppress it. They try to be normal, to dismiss the knowing, to stay silent in meetings, in friendships, in love. But the cost of that suppression is spiritual exhaustion. They weren't built for small talk and surface truths. They were built to see through, to feel into, to awaken others by simply existing as they are. Their presence is prophetic, even if no one around them understands why. This is why the intuitive introvert feels both gifted and burdened, both wise and invisible. They see the soul behind the smile, the fear behind the brag, the future in the fragments. But in a world addicted to certainty, their mystery feels like madness. And still, they return to themselves. Because deep down, they know the soul doesn't need permission to speak. It only needs to be trusted. If this insight into Jung's framework helped you better understand your intuitive strengths and your struggles with staying grounded, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments below. Let's continue uncovering the deeper layers of the mind together. 4. The 3 psychological traps. Most people don't understand that for intuitive introverts, the gift of deep perception often feels more like a heavy cross than a superpower. It's not just about reading between the lines. It's about being unable to turn off your inner radar. You don't just see things, you sense them in your soul. You feel the lies no one admits. You absorb the moods no one speaks, and you carry the tension others refuse to name. You're not guessing you know, but that knowledge isolates you. Carl Jung warned, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Yet even awakening has its shadows. And for intuitive souls, those shadows can become traps if they're not consciously recognized and mastered. The first trap is archetypal inflation. When you begin to identify too strongly with spiritual roles like the prophet, the healer, or the visionary. It starts subtly. You offer guidance. People listen. You feel validated. But over time, the ego confuses itself with the archetype. You stop being a man with a soul and start believing you are the archetype itself. You become the message rather than its vessel. And though it feels powerful, it quietly separates you from reality, from humility, from growth. You stop relating to others as equals and begin operating from a pedestal no one asked you to stand on. The soul becomes consumed by its own reflection and forgets its purpose. Then comes psychic contamination, the most exhausting part of being deeply intuitive. You can't help but absorb other people's energy, their grief, fear, insecurity, until you can't tell what's yours and what's theirs. You might wake up sad and not realize it's your partner's unspoken anxiety. You might feel suffocated after a meeting and not realize your nervous system has absorbed everyone's stress. You walk around like an emotional sponge, heavy and saturated. And unless you know how to spiritually cleanse, protect, and separate your energy, your soul slowly gets buried under burdens it was never meant to carry. You become tired, irritable, lost in emotions that were never born inside you. But perhaps the most deceptive trap is possession by the unconscious. This is when your inner world becomes so loud, so symbolically charged, that you start living more in dream logic than grounded reality. You see signs in everything. A crow becomes a prophecy. A coincidence becomes a command. You start waiting for the universe to speak instead of making decisions. You stop acting and start watching, interpreting every single thing as if it's part of some divine chessboard. It feels spiritual, but it's actually disorienting. Without balance, even the deepest soul can drown in its own mysticism. These 3 traps, archetypal inflation, psychic contamination, and unconscious possession, don't mean there's something wrong with you. They mean your soul is deeply tuned, and like any finely tuned instrument, it needs care, precision, and awareness. To walk this path is to learn how to feel deeply without losing yourself, how to sense truth without abandoning logic, and how to carry light without burning out. The intuitive soul is not here to escape reality. It's here to illuminate it. And that requires not just sensitivity, but strength, discernment, and above all, grounded spiritual maturity. Do any of these psychological traps feel familiar to you? Comment, "I've been there," if you've experienced them, or "Still exploring," if you're just starting to recognize them. And if this gave you clarity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what's coming next. 5. Stage 1. The gift feels magical. You discover your gift when you're still young, long before you have the words to explain it. You feel what others are hiding. You know when someone's lying, even if their face shows nothing, and you can sense what's coming before it arrives. You see connections others miss between people, events, energy, and outcomes. At first, it feels magical, like you're chosen, touched by something divine. There's a thrill in knowing what others don't, in watching situations unfold exactly as you foresaw. But soon, that thrill turns to confusion. When you try to share what you feel, people dismiss it. They say you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or just imagining things. You begin to question yourself, not because you're wrong, but because you're alone in what you see. This is what Carl Jung spoke of when he explored the intuitive type, those whose perceptions stem not from logic, but from the soul's deeper sensing. You walk into a meeting and instantly know who's manipulating the conversation, who's afraid, who's about to quit. You sense relationships unraveling before a word is said. You dream of disasters before the headlines break. But when you speak up, they laugh, brush it off, or worse, look at you like you've lost your mind. So you stop sharing, not because the visions stop, but because the disbelief cuts deeper than silence. You withdraw, not out of arrogance, but out of exhaustion. The more awake your soul becomes, the more blind the world around you feels. In a society obsessed with logic, your spiritual radar becomes a burden. Your gift isolates you. You walk through life knowing too much, feeling too much, and carrying the weight of truths no one else will claim. A friend once said his marriage was fine, but I saw it unraveling in his nervous laughter, the way he avoided eye contact when she was mentioned. I knew he was pretending, and months later, when it all fell apart, he asked how I knew. I didn't know how, I just felt it. That's the reality of the intuitive introvert. You're not guessing. You're tuned into something ancient and unspoken. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart." But clarity can be isolating. You're the one who notices the shift in someone's tone before they realize they're upset. You sense when something is spiritually off, even if all the facts seem fine. This sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's depth. It's a form of spiritual perception that reads the emotional and energetic fields most people ignore. Over time, this gift forces you to create distance, not because you don't care, but because you feel everything. The problem isn't your intuition, it's that the world forgot how to listen to the language of the soul. You're not broken. You're just ahead of your time. You were born seeing what others spend decades trying to find, and your journey now is not to prove yourself to them, but to trust yourself, ground your gift, and protect your energy. Because this curse only feels like one when you seek validation from those who cannot see. The real task is to turn inward, honor what you feel, and remember that your sensitivity is not your flaw, it's your superpower. If you're still here, comment "I'm awakening" below. Your voice helps us shape this journey, and your presence truly matters. 6. Stage 2. The curse emerges. You sense things before they're said. You feel the tension no one talks about, the sadness behind someone's smile, the betrayal that hasn't yet unfolded. It's not guesswork. It's a knowing that lives in your bones. You try to explain what you feel, but people dismiss you, misunderstand you, or accuse you of overthinking. So you begin to hide it. You start living a double life. On the surface, you laugh at the right times, say what's expected, and appear calm. But inside, you are flooded with spiritual impressions, subtle shifts in energy, invisible patterns playing out in every conversation. You're not just picking up emotions, you're absorbing them, and it's exhausting. The more you sense, the more others seem to resist your truth. You don't even have to speak it. Your presence alone feels like a mirror they didn't ask for. They feel exposed, not because you judge them, but because you see through them. Carl Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. But when your presence reflects their hidden wounds, many would rather reject you than face themselves. Over time, your insight becomes a curse. You second-guess your inner voice. You start wondering if something's wrong with you. You become isolated not because you want to be alone, but because the surface world feels hollow. Shallow conversations drain you. Loud rooms overwhelm you. You crave depth, silence, and connection that doesn't require you to shrink your soul. This silence breeds pressure. The pressure becomes pain. And that pain splits into 3 traps: self-doubt, isolation, and burnout. First, you doubt your gift. You ask, why can I feel what others deny? Second, you retreat into solitude, not for peace, but because it's the only place you can breathe. And third, you grow tired of pretending, of filtering, of holding back what your spirit knows to be true. You're not weak. You're not too sensitive. You're spiritually awake in a world that often prefers sleep. And this burden is heavy, but it's also sacred. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to transform. You were never meant to be believed by everyone. You were meant to believe in yourself, even when no one else does. Being an intuitive introvert isn't just a personality trait. It's a soul contract. It means carrying light through dark spaces, speaking truth that no one else dares to name, and feeling everything because your presence was designed to heal. It's why you feel more. It's why you know more. But with that gift comes the responsibility to protect your energy, to stop apologizing for your depth, and to recognize that your spiritual sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a form of intelligence the world doesn't yet fully understand. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to remind those who forgot how to feel, how to listen, how to see. And though that path may feel lonely, it is also divine. If this stage resonates with your experience, living between what you see and what you can't say, don't forget to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. We explore the hidden layers of perception and how to carry this gift without letting it crush your soul. 7. Stage 3. Integration, the way out. The third stage, integration, is not just the rarest, but the most spiritually transformative part of the journey for intuitive introverts who have long carried the burden of sensing too much. It demands a level of inner mastery that few reach because it asks you to not only survive your sensitivity, but to turn it into structured power. The first essential skill in this stage is to strengthen sensation, a spiritual regrounding into the physical world. For decades, you may have lived in your mind, in your visions, your predictions, your feelings, floating above the noise of reality while being overwhelmed by it. But now, you must return to your body like a warrior returning to his armor. Walk with presence, not just to move, but to feel the ground. Cook not just to eat, but to engage with heat, texture, and nourishment. Tend to plants, clean your space, move with deliberate intention. Every physical act becomes a ritual that anchors you back into your soul's home, the body. This is how the unconscious flood begins to subside, not by resisting it, but by balancing it through embodiment. Carl Jung once said, "The body is your mind's best friend." And when you honor it, you regain control over your spiritual channel. Once grounded, the next sacred task is to translate the invisible. You can no longer afford to keep what you see and feel locked within. Your intuitive gifts, those flashes of knowing, those psychic impressions, those energetic truths, are only isolating when they are not given form. Expression is your redemption. Write the dreams that haunt you. Paint the energies you sense. Speak the patterns others don't notice. Build frameworks, draw maps, invent language to help people understand what lives beneath the surface of their own awareness. You do not need to explain everything, but you must give people something they can hold. It's how your soul stops whispering only to you and begins teaching others. And in doing so, your isolation turns into leadership. Jung believed the soul was both the source of deep feeling and deep creativity, and when those two meet, transformation is inevitable. Translation turns you from misunderstood into messenger. But none of this can unfold without the third mastery, setting boundaries. As you open to deeper truths, you must also learn when to close. Your intuitive channel cannot be left exposed to every energy that walks by. You must choose when to listen, when to block, and when to disengage. This is not avoidance, it is spiritual hygiene. Say no when your nervous system says, stop. Walk away when your energy begins to drain. Pause and ask, is this mine to carry? Because not every feeling belongs to you. And without boundaries, even a gift becomes poison. You need space between your soul and the noise of the world. Just like the lungs need to exhale, your energy needs release and renewal. Discernment becomes your sword and shield. Integration is not becoming numb, it's becoming sovereign. And only when you combine these three skills, grounding in sensation, translating the invisible, and protecting your soul's doorway, can you truly begin to live as the powerful, intuitive man you were always meant to be. Have you ever tried grounding your intuition through something physical like writing, painting, or tending to a garden? If yes, share your experience in the comments so others can learn from you. If not, comment, I will begin the integration to step into this rare and transformational path with us. 8. The path forward. Most people will never truly grasp what it means to live with a radar that detects emotions, energy shifts, and unspoken truths the moment you step into a room. You feel tension behind polite smiles, sadness hidden beneath laughter, and dishonesty masked by charm. You sense everything, yet when you speak on it, you're met with disbelief, indifference, or ridicule. This is the silent burden of intuitive, introverted spiritual receptors in a world that glorifies noise and dismisses depth. Carl Jung, the pioneering voice of analytical psychology, once warned that those with heightened intuition often suffer not because of what they know, but because of how profoundly they know it. It's not just knowledge, it's soul-deep awareness. And while others casually drift through the surface of life, you are submerged in the undercurrents, absorbing the unseen stories that shape every room, every conversation, every interaction. You watch people move through life, oblivious to their contradictions. Yet you pick up on every inconsistency, the way someone's words betray their energy, the moment someone's smile fades ever so slightly when another person enters the room. You may not always have evidence, but you carry truth in your body. And when you speak from that inner knowing, they think you're imagining things, exaggerating, or being too emotional. But 3 months later, your instincts prove right. This is the paradox. Your gift is powerful, yet it isolates you. You see patterns before they unfold, sense danger before it arrives, and feel betrayal before it's admitted. You're not paranoid. You're perceptive. Yet the weight of knowing without validation can wear down even the strongest soul. Carl Jung emphasized that becoming your true self is the greatest privilege of a lifetime. But for intuitive introverts, that path often begins in exile. Because before your gift is recognized, it is rejected even by you. A man once shared how, for decades, he numbed his intuition to be accepted. Called too sensitive since childhood, he learned to mask his insights, silence his instincts, and conform to emotional shallowness. But after a personal crisis shattered his mask, he sought help from a Jungian therapist who taught him to reconnect with his inner voice. That voice, once silenced, became his guide. He began journaling, meditating, writing poetry, and simple acts that helped him remember who he was before the world told him to forget. Today, he mentors others who feel lost, guiding them not through logic, but through presence. His story is not rare. It is the quiet legacy of many intuitive souls who transmute rejection into wisdom and pain into purpose. When integrated, intuitive introverts become more than feelers. They become healers, pattern breakers, emotional architects. They see chaos and turn it into clarity. They don't just reflect the world, they reinterpret it through the lens of the soul. Though less than 2% of the population may understand your depth, history has always been shaped by the few who dared to see beyond what was visible. Your sensitivity is not weakness. Your intuition is not imagination. Your soul is not confused. It's just been waiting for you to stop explaining yourself and start embodying your truth. Carl Jung believed that true healing begins in the individual soul, not in society. So don't wait for the world to believe you. Believe in your own knowledge, because what others call too much is actually a mirror they're not ready to look into. And what feels like a curse is often the very thing the world is quietly starving for. If this message resonates with your soul, leave a comment of strength. My gift is sacred. I will carry it with clarity and courage. And if you've walked this path of integration, share your wisdom below your story, maybe the light someone else is searching for. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next step on this journey. So if you've ever felt like you sense too much, see too deeply, or understand what no one else seems to notice, know this: you are not broken. You are tuned into a truth the world hasn't learned how to accept yet. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And for intuitive introverts, That means honoring your inner knowing, even when the world doubts it. If this message resonated with your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Give this video a like, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming insights on psychology, spirituality, and transformation. Until next time, trust what you sense, even if no one else does.